Hey, it's Scott Petrak with another episode of the Brown Zone Coverage Podcast. As much of the NFL world is focused on the playoffs, the Browns have remained busy as they stand on the outside looking in. The Browns hired a new offensive coordinator, provided a serious Deshaun Watson medical update, and continue to fight with the city of Cleveland regarding the move to Brook Park. Here to discuss, as always, is Dave Chudowsky of the WKYC Morning News. How's it going, Chud?
It's going well, Scott, and we have a lot to talk about here on this cold January week. I mean, my goodness, it's like, I'll tell you what, it's cold, but like it's really cold at 2 and 3 in the morning
Oh,
when you go to work like I do. I mean, it
dude.
really slaps you in the face.
Dude, you're right. When I used to have to go to the office for editing shifts and I would get done at about 1:32. Oh my gosh. And it wasn't a long walk to the car, but you never warm up, like you get in the car, it takes 10 minutes in the car to warm up, you're only halfway home. I
Oh
know
my
that's
gosh.
that's brutal. I know. Even letting the dog out's cold.
So funny you say that because we just got a puppy, as you know, and yeah, I mean, between all of our family members, someone's got to go outside with the dog all the time. So yeah, this is but that's why we got her in the summertime though. I can't imagine like getting a puppy in the winter and training a
Oh,
dog and potty training during the wintertime. Oh man.
right. No, that's a good point.
Yeah, no doubt. But well, speaking of dogs, let's talk about our brownies here. I can't wait to talk NFL playoffs though at the end of this. That was we got some good games coming up this week, but let's start with the new offensive coordinator,
Yeah.
and it looks like he is the first one they interviewed, right? And one
Mhm.
of five that they interviewed. Are you surprised that he's the guy?
I'm not surprised, Chud. You heard pretty quickly after the season that he was going to be a candidate, that they liked him. I mean, even when they hired him not even a year ago from the University of Alabama, um, they were high on him. And Kevin Stefanski said it in the news release that came out today, making it official. We're taping this Wednesday afternoon. When he was talking about Tommy Rees, called him, said he has a brilliant mind. He spent his whole life in football. His dad was a personnel man and even worked for the Browns from 2004 to 2008 as director of player personnel. So, he says he's extremely bright, been around the game his entire life, incredible football mind. So when you feel that way about somebody, and he's only 32, and he's considered this up and comer, rising star in the league, he interviewed twice for the North Carolina job that Bill Belichick got. There was conjecture that maybe Mike Vrabel would be interested in him as his offensive coordinator in New England, even though Josh McDaniels is um, considered a big possibility there too. You can tell this guy is going places. And if that's the case, and you believe that, if you're Kevin Stefanski and the Browns, then it makes sense to keep him and to try to harness that and get everything you can out of it before maybe he leaves to go be a head coach somewhere else. So I understand the hire. I personally thought Clint Kubiak, the Saints offensive coordinator, who Kevin Stefanski worked with for 3 years in Minnesota. Kevin Stefanski learned the offensive system that he installed in Cleveland in 2020 from Gary Kubiak, Clint's dad, and they were all three together in Minnesota in 2019. Um, to me, that made a lot of sense, hiring Clint Kubiak. We talk about, and I wrote an analysis early in the week, how I think it's really important that Stefanski goes back to that wide zone run scheme, and you tie that in with the play action passing, and that's what the Kubiaks do. So I thought if you're going to go back to that kind of system, this would be a seamless fit, and Clint Kubiak could kind of jumpstart that return to that kind of system. So without having sat in those meetings and without having interviewed Clint Kubiak or anything like that, I thought that would have made the most sense. But I completely understand Tommy Rees. And then now it's okay, how do Kevin Stefanski and Rees reshape, as Kevin Stefanski says, reshape the offense for 2025? How do they come together to go back to that scheme if that's what they're going to? Does Kevin Stefanski call the plays? Does he return to, as a play caller like he's done for most of his time here? And the offense is so bad, and yet Tommy Rees was on that staff, but obviously they don't blame Tommy Rees for the fact that the quarterback play was so bad and they only averaged, a league worst 15.2 points a game. So I think those are all things that go into the discussion. Um, but I can't argue with this hire because I do think Tommy Rees is a good football coach.
But the thing about it, though, Scott, it's like Tommy Rees was not a household name. But all of a sudden, when he gets hired, then you start hearing, a clip of Nick Saban talking about how great he is. And you start hearing about how, oh, they were going to, they were afraid they were going to lose him. But, you don't hear this stuff until this happens. So I guess my question is, do you fault fans for maybe feeling like, oh, they're just bringing in a guy that Stefanski can basically just, hey, you go ahead and control the room, but this is my offense. I'm going to call the plays. You know what I mean?
I do. Well, first of all, I don't blame fans for questioning the hire. They're coming off 3-14. Um, we know how bad the offense was, and Stefanski and Reese were a part of that. So I completely get any kind of skepticism from the fans. And I didn't think this hire would go over like gangbusters. I think fans are looking for change, and Tommy Reese is not. I mean, he's not Ken Dorsey, so it is a change. But you get what I'm saying. He's not a huge change. He's been in the building. He's right down the hallway. So I get that sentiment if fans are feeling that. To your point about, you hadn't heard a lot about Tommy Reese. I just think that's the nature of things. He was a tight ends coach. You're not in front of the cameras very often. It's not a particularly glamorous position. He is only 32 years old, so he hasn't kind of been in the consciousness a ton. Notre Dame
Mm-hmm.
quarterback, so people knew the name from
Mm-hmm.
that. He was a coordinator at Notre Dame for 3 years and then went to Alabama to be coordinator in 2023 under Nick Saban. Says he learned a ton. Only he'd spent 1 year in the NFL before this. It was 2016 as an offensive assistant with the Chargers. So he is a newbie to the NFL. So I think that's why he's probably been under the radar. Um, so yeah, I mean, so I get it when you're talking about the fans. And to your question about is it just Stefanski saying yes, I can kind of control things? I do think there's an element to that. If the Browns had hired Darrell Bevel, who's one of the four other guys that interviewed for the coordinator job, he's been a coordinator for four teams. He won a Super Bowl with Seattle as a coordinator, went to another Super Bowl with Seattle as a coordinator. Then that guy doesn't come in and say, "Oh, I'm going to take a back seat to Kevin Stefanski." At least that's my interpretation
Exactly.
of things, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So then it's okay, he's going to call plays. It's going to be his system, and Stefanski's a little bit along for the ride, and maybe Kevin's not ready for that. I don't think he likes giving up the play calling like he did after week 7 this year. I think he likes calling the plays, likes having control of the offense, and that's completely understandable. We've talked about it a million times. I think he is a good play caller, and if he's in control of your offense, I have no problem with that. So if that's part of the Tommy Rees hire, I'm fine with that, but it puts more pressure on Kevin Stefanski because if it's Stefanski's system that they return to, and if it's Stefanski calling the plays, then there's nobody else to turn to. No other scapegoats. No,
Mm-hmm.
like Ken Dorsey felt like not a scapegoat, but it felt like he was responsible for a lot of this from the beginning. It was his system he brought in. Then he winds up calling plays, and none of it worked. Where this is going to all fall on Kevin Stefanski.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, someone just came up to me this morning and said, I should have been Bevel and, get a guy with experience like that. And my just first reaction was, this is the case where Stefanski can, have a young guy that won't, maybe challenge him as much. And he like I mentioned, hey, it's kind of like it was with, before Dorsey,
Right, with AVP.
and even with, yeah, and even with Dorsey at the beginning, where so I guess what I'm leading up to now is, Scott, in your opinion, do you see this? Who's going to be calling the plays? Will it be
Yeah,
Stefanski?
I think so. I think. I mean, Tommy Rees called him at Notre Dame and he called him at Alabama, so he has that experience. He's never called him in the NFL. It'll be his first time in the NFL. Is anything more than a position coach, really? He had that pass game specialist title last year, but he even he had Stefanski downplayed that. So, first time as a coordinator in the NFL. I don't know if you need to put the play calling on his plate right away, especially given Stefanski's background doing it. So I think Stefanski calls plays. And kind of building on what you said, Chud, I don't know if it's so much about Reese having to kind of listen to Stefanski or fall in line with Stefanski. I think it's more about Stefanski's belief in himself. And okay, if they're going to go back to his system, then he should be the guy calling the plays, and he should be the guy helping make that switch back. And you know, for whatever it's worth, Kevin Stefanski is quote unquote on the hot seat entering next year. There's no way to get around that when you just went 3-14. So I think in that position, you would want to have your fate in your hands, and being the play caller enables you to do that. So I think all of that probably goes into that decision.
Yeah, sign me up for. I think Stefanski's going to be calling plays. I agree with you. We'll see if that changes. Did you mention this, or did I see somewhere that he was a ball boy for the Browns?
Yeah, Tommy was his dad, Bill, when he was director of player personnel. Tommy was a ball boy. So yeah, he said he got his first paycheck from the Browns. He says he thinks his mom still has it framed somewhere. He would, he worked in the equipment room. He would catch ball. He said he would shag kicks for Phil Dawson. He would work in the equipment room and rub down the balls. So yeah, he's been around football. Obviously, he said he played quarterback at Notre Dame. I think he's when he left Notre Dame, I think he was number 2 in yards and number 3 in touchdown passes thrown. So,
Mhm.
I mean, you've heard this name for a while. His dad was around the Browns. His dad was a long time executive in the league and in college. So, knows a lot about football. If talk to people that knew him at Notre Dame or knew him growing up, they all talk about, or not growing up, but growing up through the coaching profession. You mentioned Nick Saban raving about him. He has a really good reputation, is considered extremely smart. So having a guy like that with more input in the offense, I don't think that's a bad thing at all.
Yeah, it seems pretty simple to me. Stefanski can keep control, call the plays, gets a young guy that's an up and coming star in the NFL, and doesn't have to worry about making a lot of changes. They did this quickly. They made the change at offensive line coach and offensive coordinator quickly, and it's just all right. We move forward now, and it just makes sense to me of why Stefanski made these decisions.
Yeah, I completely agree. Though the only thing I'll go back to is if you're looking for huge shakeup coming off of 3-14, maybe you thought there it would be at the coordinator spot. And while there is a change of coordinator, and I think I have no doubt there's going to be a change in the system. The Browns are going away from the Ken Dorsey spread, shotgun, quarterback run that they tried to use early in the season. So those are significant changes. But it's not bringing in a huge name of coordinator, which I think some fans probably had hopes for.
Mhm. So I thought this was going to be our lead up until the offensive coordinator news, but obviously a big story here with Deshaun Watson. Here we go again talking about Watson, but this is a big deal, Scott. He underwent a second surgery to repair his right Achilles tendon rupture. He initially tore it, of course, against the Bengals on October 20th. And now we're in a situation where, I mean, now, Scott, well, first of all, before we analyze this, help everyone understand in case they don't know, and I'm assuming they do exactly what happened here.
Yeah, so he, has the surgery on October 25th, is in a boot for a long time. On December 26th, puts a post on Instagram saying that he's back on his feet, out of the boot, more glory, something along those lines is the caption. Was excited to be out of the boot. Somewhere between then and when he comes in for his exit physical, which was the day after the season, so January 5th, I want to say, that's Sunday. At some point between there, he rolls his ankle while he's in Miami. And he's got a house in Miami. He's been splitting his rehab between Cleveland and Miami. He spent a lot of time in Miami. He's got some of his medical people down there. So all I know is that he rolled an ankle. I have not been able to get any more specifics than that. How he rolled the ankle, what was he doing when he rolled the ankle? But the belief is that the rolling of the ankle led to a re-rupture of the Achilles tendon. And he had surgery last Thursday to repair it. And restarts the clock on his rehab and recovery. And we talked about last week, Chuck, we knew there had been a setback. We knew surgery was possible, but this is about as bad as it could be. That it was a re-rupture, that it was another complete surgery, right? They had to reattach it and repair it, whatever you do when you go in and fix a ruptured Achilles. And what's I think what is the biggest takeaway is now I don't think the Browns, I don't know if they were ever counting on Watson to contribute in 2025, but I think there was a thought of he's going to have to be on the roster. That's just the way it is given his contract. And now, to me, the belief is he's not going to be on this roster in 2025, and he probably spends all of it on IR, and then they can probably get rid of him after 2025 and figure it out from a salary cap perspective. And we're looking way down the road here, but I think I feel like he has played his last down with the Browns. And I know we talked about that in October, but there were a million other things standing in the way of being real confident about that, including that salary, his guaranteed salary, and then that salary cap hit he was going to take, or the Browns have to take because of him. And I think if he doesn't play in 2025, then it's easier for the Browns to just move on after 2025. And even in the Browns statement, it's Watson's recovery time and return to play status is uncertain, and he will likely miss significant time during the 2025 season. So for them to put that in black and white in the,
Mm-hmm.
and put it on their social media and everything, that means they're not counting on him in 2025. And even not counting him, I think they're good with him not being here in 2025. And then the only thing that would change that is if Watson was hell bent on coming back next year. And that just seems far fetched.
Well, wait, let me check you on one thing though. You
Yeah.
said that you think the Browns didn't think that he would possibly be a factor in 2025, but are you saying even before the setback? Because I thought we talked a couple weeks ago how we thought, oh boy, they might be considering him to have a chance to play next year.
Yes. That's, I am saying that, Chuck, that they weren't counting on him. They weren't counting on him in 2025. Now, could he have Could he have wound up playing? Yes. If he's on the roster, if he's at practice and training camp, could that have changed the way the team viewed things? Certainly. And I think they would have left the door open given the huge contract and given the commitment they made to him and all those things. That if he was physically able, they would not have shut the door on him. But I also know that they were not counting on him to be their starter. They were going to overhaul the room regardless of this injury. Now it's just a complete makeover versus how does Watson factor in? And maybe that's a little contradictory, but I feel like they were ready to move on without him, but knew he would
Mm-hmm.
still be here. So they couldn't completely move on without him. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. No, and now that we know this second surgery happened, I agree with you. I don't think we'll see him play again in a Browns uniform because they're going to have to make future plans now. They have to move on, especially knowing that even if he were to come back in the last year of his contract, I mean, you got to move on for next year. So I think, and especially with everything and how it's gone down, and you don't know how he'll recover. So I think I agree with you. I think it's the last time. Now, there's a chance, right, that they can go after him to get some money back if he injured himself, not while on recovery, correct?
Yeah, there's a couple elements in play here. If he got hurt doing something that was outlawed in his contract or forbidden in his contract, then yeah, the Browns could go after him and try to nullify the contract. Um, Pro Football Talk had a list of those things, and none of those feel like something he would have been doing. Water skiing and those kind of things, right? Dangerous type things. Now, if he rolled it, dancing, or if he rolled it walking around his house, I don't think that's something that gets the contract null and voided. So I think that's a stretch. I'm sure the Browns look into it, and we'll see if if they could save $92 million or part of the $92 million and save that salary cap space, they certainly would look into it. But that feels like a long shot to me. What is realistic, Chud, is that if he doesn't play in 2025, they have insurance on Watson. And while they could get back the cash that they would pay him, the organization, they would also get back a portion of the salary cap space devoted to the contract. Now, my understanding is they wouldn't get full salary cap relief from the insurance, but they would get partial relief. And we know that the Browns are up against it a bit. So any money that they would save from a cash and cap standpoint would be beneficial. I don't think that would kick in. That doesn't kick in until the settlement claim is finished. So whether that's 2026 or even further down the road. But there would be some relief if he didn't play at all in 2025.
But the bottom line is it's almost official now that we can just say, and we've been saying it for a long time, but now it's just like, this is one of the worst trades in NFL history, especially when you see Houston now winning in the playoffs, all the draft picks they got, all the draft picks we lost, where they're at compared to where we are at, and still not knowing who our quarterback is. It goes down as one of the worst ever.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. And you can take Houston out of it. All you have to do, I mean, that's a key component of this. But if you just look at what the return on investment that they got out of Watson, it's 19 games, right? He played 19 games here. Never threw for 300 yards. Like there's some staggering statistics that he's had from a negative standpoint, obviously, since he's been with the Browns. And the one playoff trip they made was with him, sidelined after that shoulder surgery in 2023. They put up with the suspension in 2022, all of it. So he played 19 games, missed more games than he played, won 9 and 10 as a starter. Can you think of about 4 really good moments that he had in 19 games? The statistical drop off from when he was in Houston to Cleveland goes from 68% completion to 61%. His touchdown percentage goes from 5.9 to 3.4. His yards per attempt drops from 8.3 to 6. His quarterback or his passer rating drops from 104.5 to 80.7. This is a guy that I think he had the all-time NFL completion percentage. And then he comes here and is inaccurate. All those things, right? I mean, we don't have to relive it, all of it. But yeah, those are the reasons. To me, that's the top of the list of why it's one of the worst trades ever. Then you can factor in the 3 first-round draft picks that the Browns didn't have. How he dragged down, I thought he dragged down the team when he was around. He divided the fan base when he was acquired in the trade, and then during his time here, all of it. So there's no doubt it's one of, if not the worst trade in really the history of professional sports. And I'm glad I was going to cover every step of it, John.
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? If you're a fan and bought a Watson jersey, I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, well, you know what? I don't have a whole lot of sympathy for that. I mean, you know how I felt about them signing him just due to the off the field stuff, let alone the risk from a draft pick standpoint. And the money they committed to him, I didn't even mention it. I mean, you did the $230 million fully guaranteed. Nobody's gotten a contract like that in the history of the league. And that's how you get him to come, is you have to offer that to that guy who gives you this performance and this availability when he's here. And I'm not blaming him for the shoulder injuries and the Achilles injuries, but you just didn't get anything from him. And when he played, it wasn't like he was very good. At best he was inconsistent with flashes. He looked like a shell of his former self, and it's killing the Browns. And now they need to figure out what they're going to do at quarterback. They need to figure out what they're going to do with the salary cap. And you can trace everything, right? You can trace even the state of the roster. You can trace to Deshaun Watson, because they don't have an influx of young talent, because they gave away 5 draft picks, including 3 in the first round. All those things the nebulous of all of it is the trade for Deshaun Watson in March 2022.
Yeah, no, you were all over it, Scott. You had it from the beginning, and I'll tell you, it's just, you say, well, you can't throw the injuries in, or you can't blame them for that. But what I will say is, though, this is what happens though when you put all your eggs in a basket like this, and it could be anyone, not just Deshaun Watson, any player. If that player with a contract like that, and what you gave up to get them, and they get hurt, I mean, it could be anybody. So,
Yeah. Well, and
you're
it's, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
it's I just say it's a risk. It was a big risk.
For sure. And it's one thing if that guy is Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen, the guy that was in your building, and you gave him all that money because he earned all that money. Um,
Hmm.
right? The Browns went out of the way to go get this guy. And I don't want to relitigate the Baker Mayfield thing, but they had a quarterback. Right? So they they went out and said, we're going to bring in this guy and all his problems. And it one, on one side, I admire the huge swing, the big risk they took. They feel like you have to do that to get your quarterback. And we might see that again this offseason, that they're going to be really aggressive about whatever quarterback that they want. And they feel that's the way to get a quarterback. And I respect that part of it. What I always bickered with was the guy that they're going after, right? Like that's the difference. Chasing a top five quarterback is completely justifiable. It's the guy that they chased is where it all broke down.
Well, agree, but I will disagree on one point. When it comes to money, I'm fine with what you just said, but not mortgaging the future with the
I
draft
got you.
picks.
Which you don't have
Yeah,
to do if which you don't have to do if it's your guy, right? If it's
yeah,
Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen, you drafted that guy, you just pay him. Yeah, that's a great point, Joe. That's a good point.
yeah. I mean, or if you just grab a guy that's a free agent, and you're
Right,
gonna,
right.
break the bank to bring in that free agent. But when you have to give away the capital like you did,
Yeah,
it was stupid. So
yeah.
believe me, I wasn't on board with it either. I don't remember all the things I said. I will say that, from a stat standpoint and what he had done in the past, I understood why they did it. And to think that if it did work out, it is what they were missing. So to that degree, I do get it. But anyway, I think we move off of that and move on to, I know you're working on a article for the stadium issue. And I know we've been over on Go on the morning news and over at Channel 3. Every day it seems like we have a story on it. What's going on right now with the stadium issue?
Yeah, well, Tuesday, the city filed a lawsuit in Cuyahoga County Common Pleas Court. And the city had said it was going to, so that's not a surprise. But the fact that it is a lawsuit, and they're trying to enforce the quote unquote Modell law that prohibits teams in the state of Ohio from leaving the city if tax dollars were used at the stadium the team plays in, right? So the city of Cleveland has spent a ton of money on that stadium, taxpayer money, that, according to the law, the way the city reads the law, that means the team cannot just move. And obviously, this was put in place after Art Modell moves the team to Baltimore at the end of the '95 season. So this was to prohibit that from happening again. And the Browns in October filed a federal lawsuit wanting clarity on the Modell law and saying it was unenforceable and unconstitutional, even though they wouldn't admit that they were going to break it. So there's a ton of layers to this, Chud. The city is saying, hey, this law is in place to keep you from moving out of the city where you've gotten all these taxpayer dollars, and you have to inform us if you're moving and give. And if we say no, if the city says no, then you have to give someone else a chance to buy it and keep it in the city, buy the franchise and keep it in the city. So that's what the city that's what the city is using to fight the move to Brook Park. Now, first of all, I think the first issue is moving 13 miles to Brook Park. Does that count on moving? Does that count as moving? Because if it was to prevent the team, or if it's to prevent fans from having their team ripped away, then that's not a factor here, because that's the team isn't getting ripped away from its fans, right? Everybody can still go to the game. All the fans that watch on TV can still watch on TV. So that's not a part of it. What is a part of it is, okay, you're taking away this, what the city would call an anchor of downtown, an anchor of the city of Cleveland, and moving it to a suburb and that hurts the city financially. It hurts the city's stability, and that's why the city doesn't want the Browns to move. So I think all that's in play, and whether or not the law is even constitutional, which the Browns argue it's not. So that's where the fight is right now, Chud. And I'm really curious to see what your take is. My initial thought, and like you said, I'm writing this kind of column and I'm kind of working my way through it from my thought process is it didn't have to be this way. It didn't have to be lawsuit versus lawsuit, public animosity, all this bickering going back and forth, this posturing. I feel like the two sides could have come to a better agreement and would have saved everyone from all of this. And I think it's unfortunate that it has come to this.
Well, and the other, I think my take on it is I can't help but think about, and it makes you go back to think about when Modell moved the team. And, you know, listen, with good reason, and I don't think he should ever be in the Hall of Fame. The Browns moving to Baltimore was one of the worst things in Cleveland sports history. I'll never forget when it happened. It was a crushing blow in my life, and so many fans, and I know you, and believe me, I will never stick up for him at all. But you know, the city played a role in that too, Scott. Right? I mean, you can blame the city of Cleveland for losing the Browns back when it happened, can't you?
Yeah, I mean, that was certainly a factor in it, Chud. I mean, Art Modell's bankruptcy and not having any money was a huge part of that. And he, I think he was in a position where he either needed to sell the team or move the team, and he wound up doing both. Uh, but he wasn't ready to sell it to whoever it would have been, Al Lerner or whoever it would have been in Cleveland. Um, but the city committed a bunch of money to Gateway and what was then Jacobs Field and then Gund Arena. And Art Modell felt like the city wasn't giving him enough love or attention or recognizing his needs and the stadium's needs. And it was an old stadium with a bunch of issues. So yeah, I do think the stadium had a role, um, or I mean the city had a role, but like you, I would never kind of let Modell off the hook.
Yeah, no, not at all. But I guess my point is, it's like, oh, we fast forward to 2025, and we're still dealing with the city versus the
Yeah.
organization, and you know, you can't figure it out. I do think it's way different, just like you said. I mean, you're not moving out of Cleveland per se; you're moving to a suburb. But just the fact that everything was rushed when they came back. You know, the way the team was built, the stadium. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, is and we've talked about this before. I mean, it's not like it's one of the best stadiums in the NFL. I mean, um, do you right? I mean, you know,
Yeah.
I wish they would have like built a better stadium and like built more around it. And I mean, you think about this in '99. I mean, I think we were so blind in the fact that we were just excited to have our team back that we didn't really think about how it was going to be put together both on the field and off.
Well, I think all of that's fair, Chud. I wasn't covering the team on an everyday basis in '97 and '89 when it was getting built, but everything I mean, I've been at that stadium a million times, and you hear about it being rushed, and it's not as nice as other stadiums, and I think all that's true. I would still, and I think it's too late. I think the Haslam's are moving this team to Brook Park, and
Hmm.
it's it's not coming back. And
No,
maybe if they lost six times in court, they would have to settle. They have to figure out a way to come back. I don't think that's going to happen. And I think before that happened, they would reach an agreement with the city that allows them to move to Brook Park. So they're moving to Brook Park. I always thought Cleveland was better for the Browns since this has been a topic. Um, I'm okay with open air. If you wanted a dome, I know it's hard to build a dome. Burke Lakefront would be super expensive. I think in an ideal world, you either have a huge renovation at the lakefront and play there like you always have, and I'm fine with that. I don't think that's an issue at all. I think you can live with the parking, you can live with the ingress and egress. Um, that's my opinion. If you want to build a new stadium and it has to be a dome, and you could build it at Burke, that would be a great alternative if you're committed to a dome. I just like it being in Cleveland. I like the anchor part of it being in Cleveland. I do think downtown will suffer without the Browns there, at least until the lakefront is built up. If they can get that happening, and where the stadium used to be, if they can develop that like they've been talking about, then maybe they don't miss the Browns. But that feels like a long way away. I know, and right now my thought is downtown's going to miss the Browns
Yeah, well,
financially and other ways.
yeah, go ahead.
No, that's it. So I think they're gonna. So that would be my ideal situation, is for the Browns to stay downtown in one of those two ways. With
Yeah.
that not happening and them moving to Brook Park, then you have to recalibrate and figure out how it works best for everybody.
Yeah, the last things I'll say is I think the Modell law is very vague. I
Yes.
don't think it's gonna. I don't think it's gonna hold up to stop the Haslams from doing what they want to do. That said, if somehow a court did say, "Hey, no, you can't do this," and you have to, the Browns are allowed to, you know, or the city is allowed to find a new owner, well, then I mean, then that would happen. I just don't see that happening. So I think, like you said, it's going to go down the way that we have kind of thought it would go down with them going to Brook Park. And the other thing too is, hey, listen, the city has had an eternity to get that area correct,
Right.
and it has just been a big strikeout and miss that we have all that lakefront, and it's so barren like it is. It's a shame, and I look forward to whether the Browns are down there or not. And listen, other cities have survived when their teams go to suburbs, and there's many teams that don't have their stadium downtown. Now, a lot of the cities are bigger, and yes, it will hurt downtown, but I think everyone will survive in the end.
Yeah, you're
Now,
probably right.
maybe who doesn't survive are some of the businesses downtown, but I still think on game days you'll still get people staying downtown, and you'll still get some traffic down there. Now, it won't be like it was, but that I do feel for the local businesses. I will say that.
Yeah, and to me, Chud, I think how this gets solved is the Haslams figure out a way to make Cleveland whole, and whatever dollar amount that is. And we're going to give X number to the city or X number to the development of the lakefront. We'll pay to get the stadium torn down. Whatever it is that they can come together, at least from a public relations standpoint, and say, we're not deserting the city. We want the city to thrive. And the Hasms have always said that. And this would just be another step in that, another show of their commitment. And financially would be a great way to do it, is, hey, we're going to be really involved financially, the public face of it, whatever it is, of rebuilding the lakefront. And we're not just deserting downtown. And I think that is still, to me, what the best solution will be. But, the Hasms are moving to Brook Park because they can make more money in Brook Park. It's that simple. They
Mm-hmm.
want the money from parking. They want to be part of that entertainment district around it with hotels and restaurants and retail. They want that kind of money, and they own the team, and they feel like they can do it. Now they're also asking for $1 billion of taxpayer money, right? So it's not. So I get why there are opposing sides to this, and it's not. I don't think it's just cut and dried. Is okay. This is yes, it's Albrook Park. There's no issues with Brook Park. I don't agree with that, but you also can say there's plenty of issues downtown and at the current site, and I get that too. And the last point I want to make is there was a shift. It's at one point, and it wasn't long ago. Uh, the plan was to renovate the stadium, and it was going to be $1 billion renovation. And I saw those plans, and it looked really cool. And then the Haslam switched, whether it was the city dragging its feet when they were talking about how they were decide they're going to pay for the renovation, or just the Haslam's got to look at some new domes being built around the NFL in LA and Minnesota and Jerry World in Dallas and Atlanta, and said, hey, we can do this, and we can make some more money off of it, and it's cool, and we don't have to stay on the lake, and we don't have to renovate. All those things go into the Haslam's relatively recent desire to build this dome in Brook Park. And I think the switch in Haslam philosophy caught the city off guard, and the city has kind of been fighting uphill since then
Mm-hmm.
and never came up with maybe a great alternative or a way to make the Haslam's reconsider and say, no, we're going to stay downtown.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're proud people too, and I think also you mentioned it's about money, but it's also, which this also brings them money. they would love to see a Super Bowl come to the area and all the big events that they can draw.
Well, that's the other part. Those are necessary for the dome to be worth its worth the cost, right? We've talked
Mm-hmm.
about this. They have to host a ton of events every year, and you have to have some major events, whether that's one Super Bowl, and I think thinking you're gonna have more than one is a pipe dream. I'm not even sure they can have one, but that would be the goal. If it's a Final Four every 15 years, if it's Taylor Swift concerts, whatever it is, do you get all these people coming to town once or twice a year, and then you have all other people attending, going to things at the dome throughout the year. And that's visitors, that's people who live here. What are other events you can have at the dome that would make it way more usable, and that's not the word I'm looking for, than the stadium, right? Right now there's 12 or 14 events at the stadium. For it to be worth the money you're spending, you would have to get so much more utility out of the dome with the events and the pitches. It's a dome, so you can have these events all year long. They would just have to follow through and be able to land those events, whether it's car shows or boat shows, whatever it is, that you have people inside the dome, people around the dome, so it just doesn't sit there for 330 days with nobody going to Snow Road.
Hey, Scott, question for you.
Yeah.
Have you started looking at flights and hotels for London?
I did not. I am not. I'm worried about maybe going to the Senior Bowl and driving to the Combine. Those are first on my list, Chud, before I look into London. I gotta get those approved before I can think about
For
going to London.
yeah, but that's the other story. The Browns will
You're
be
right.
playing a home game in London.
Yeah, they will. We don't know the opponent. We don't know obviously the date yet. The schedule comes out in the spring. But you could kind of see this coming. There's a ninth home game because of the 17th game schedule. So they'll still have 8 games at Huntington Bank Field. They play one on the road. They've only played one game out of the country in the Browns' history during the regular season, and that was 2017 in London. So this will be the second time. And now with as many as 8 games being played internationally, it's going to be more than every 8 years where the Browns or every team travels. So it felt like it was coming. We thought they might go to Brazil last year, but it'll be London for the Browns. You start to look at the possible opponents that it could be. Is it the 49ers? I don't think they move a division game. Is it a 49er game? I think they host Tennessee. Could that be the game? They play the AFC East. Could it be one of those teams? It'll be interesting to see who the NFL decides to send with the Browns to London.
Yeah, it smells like a Tennessee or a team like that, you know.
Do you want to do that? Yeah, my buddy Chris Easterling from the Akron Beacon Journal wrote he was kind of going through the list of possible teams. And he's like, "Would you want to do that to Tennessee or to London? You send the 3-14 Browns and the 3-14 Titans." Yeah.
Yeah.
I think those
Oh,
are the
well.
teams you mentioned. Yeah.
Well, I mean, they send the Jags over there all the time.
Right,
So,
they're going back. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
they're every
exactly.
year.
So,
Yep.
mhm. All right, you ready for talk playoffs or you got anything
Yes.
else?
No, I think we hit what we needed to hit, Chud. Let's go to the
Yeah,
NFL playoffs.
let's do it. Let's do it. So, 4-2. We both went 4-2, and the two games we got wrong were the two that we decided were the two most difficult ones, I think. I'm pretty sure we did. We've both felt really good about the Washington upset, and we got that,
Hmm.
and we were right on board with that. And then we got some of the easier ones. The ones we lost, of course, were the Chargers let us down, and the Vikings. I'm not surprised. I wouldn't have been surprised if I was 5-1. Um, would have, obviously we always want to, go undefeated, right? I am a little surprised we went 4-2. I was pegging more of a 5-1 because I have to be honest. I don't know how much I made it clear, but I was like really torn on that Chargers Texans game because I kept
Yeah.
thinking back to the 10th Texans beating the Browns and how they might turn it on at home. But then I just started thinking about some of the games the Chargers won and Harbaugh, and I ended up doing a 180, and I just felt really confident the Chargers were going to win. So I'm not surprised necessarily about that one. The Vikings Rams, though, I just was blind. I was a blind
Yeah.
spot. I didn't see the Vikings letting down like that. I thought they'd come back. I know day of, I started thinking, what's going on here? Like I don't know. I just was kind of, especially with it being on the neutral site, kind of, but honestly, that one surprised me. So, your thoughts on the form too?
Yeah, I'm with you. I never really worried about the Chargers. Obviously, I should have. The couple of times I saw the Texans this year, I was just not impressed. CJ Stroud played way better. He made a couple of huge plays at the end of the first half that I thought really turned the tide for Houston. Justin Herbert did not play particularly well. He didn't get a ton of help. He had an interception go off a guy's hands, but he also threw a pick six, and it was just a high throw. So I did not have a whole lot of confidence at all in Houston, which is why I felt good about the Chargers. They surprised me. The Minnesota game, I feel bad for. I feel not bad for them. I feel like I should have given more credence to Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford. And we've seen them
Hmm.
have success. We've seen them win a Super Bowl. We know McVay is one of the best coaches in the leagues. Stafford's a big time quarterback. I just thought Minnesota's 14-3. I couldn't overlook that. And I thought that Kevin O'Connell would figure out a way to get Sam Darnold to go back to the way he played for most of this year. And instead, Darnold played like he did in the finale in Detroit, and that killed him. And the line didn't help at all. But to me, it was that simple. The Rams played really well, but they couldn't protect Darnold, and then Darnold didn't play well when he had some opportunities. So
Hmm.
um, that's where I got that one wrong. And I'll tell you the other thing, Chud. I kind of said, well, the Steelers game's going to be close. I was wrong about that. The Steelers didn't really show up until the second half. I thought they were going to put up a better fight. Um, and I thought somebody else was going to put up a better fight. Who was a blowout that I thought was going to be a closer game? Not
Well,
the Philly game.
The
The
Bills,
Bills game. I did.
yeah,
I thought Denver, and they come out and score that quick touchdown. I thought Denver was going to compete better with the Bills. So I was surprised those were as big a blowouts as they were. You didn't.
yeah.
You thought they were coming, but I was surprised by those.
Yeah, no, I did. I'm gonna say that I do. I did think that I thought, yes, the Ravens Steelers games are always close. Now, believe me, I didn't touch it in any kind of betting way because I just thought it was too many points.
Yeah.
But I wasn't surprised by it because the Steelers just they were on such a skid and the Ravens are playing so well. So I was not necessarily surprised by that, and I really wasn't surprised by the Bills. I did put a little put some marbles on
Well,
that
there you
one.
go.
I thought they'd win big, and they did. Now at halftime, was I like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Sure, because, but I just didn't think Denver could go in there and give a fight, rookie quarterback, and just the environment in Buffalo. So that didn't surprise me. And obviously we got the Washington game right. So, but yeah, no, 4-2. I will say this though, and I think this is the weekend I like the most because just the games they're better matchups. They're more competitive. As exciting as Wild Card Weekend is because you have a lot of games and it's the first weekend of the playoffs. And believe me, I love it. Let's be honest, the games were not that great.
No, no, they weren't. Even the quote unquote close ones, or not quote unquote, even the close ones didn't feel that close. Um, Green Bay, Philly, the Washington Tampa game was really exciting, but that
Mm-hmm.
was about it. So I'm with you. I think divisional weekend is my favorite weekend of the year. You get the four games,
Yep.
Saturday and Sunday. I love this weekend of football.
Yeah, I agree. It's great. How much did Darnold cost himself, or do you think he'll be okay
I
with
don't think he's going
the?
to be okay. I think,
Mhm.
I mean, and I don't, who knows how Minnesota was thinking. Maybe they saw the flaws all year long and was never going to commit to him. But if they had won a playoff game, I don't and go 14-3 and win a playoff game, I don't think you can move on from him at quarterback. And whether that's the franchise tag, which is 40 million or 40 plus million, I think for sure that would have been it. And then there would have been some momentum to give him a long-term deal, which then creates a potential JJ McCarthy trade. Now, I don't think there's any way he gets a long-term contract from the Vikings. I'd kind of be shocked if they franchise tagged him, and there's no way they trade JJ McCarthy. So all that switched to me, and this is obviously a guy who's not in Minnesota in that building, but I think it all changed in the last 2 weeks. And now, yes, Darnold will still be attractive somewhat in free agency, but you can't. If you're a team, let's say the Browns had all the money in the world and were worried about cap space. Could you commit 3 years and $120 million to Sam Darnold? Like, I don't think you could. Now, could you sign him for 2 years and $50 million? Yeah, I could wrap my head around that. And if the Browns wanted to do that, I'd endorse that because I think he gives you a chance. But I don't think he's getting paid like a top 12, top 15 quarterback. I just don't think he is. I don't think a team could trust him to do that.
Yeah, unfortunately, they're in a tough spot though. They got to figure something out. So
Yeah.
yeah, we'll see what happens. So, all right, let's look on to this weekend here, and not surprised how the scheduling went. The big one, I think, is well, I don't think I know. The Bills and Ravens is the biggest one, and that's the prime spot there on Sunday, the late game, and that works out for CBS because they have that slot. They alternate years. You know, if Fox had that slot, then they would probably have the
Late
Lions
game.
in there, yeah, or maybe the other one, and then they'd move the Bills Ravens would probably be in another spot. But I think it works out this way to have that last game there at 6 o'clock. So not surprised the one seeds play on Saturday, both coming off a bye. So we start with the Chiefs hosting Houston, and I think I know where we're both going to go on this one, but I'll let you start.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Chiefs win. I'm not guaranteeing they get back to Super Bowl, but they're rested. They've been here. It's Pat Mahomes. Uh, it's a big spread. I don't know quite how I feel about that spread, but I think the Chiefs win comfortably. I just don't know if I'd like them by whatever, 11 or 12.
Yeah, I pretty much echo exactly what you said. Chiefs win for sure. But Houston, I mean, they've played some interesting games close this year where maybe you wouldn't expect it, and they did win their division, right? So I mean, you're looking at the Chiefs also didn't cover a lot during the year,
Yeah.
so that makes you think maybe take the points. But at the same point, man, I could just easily see like a 27-17 final, or that's all it takes. Like, I mean, winning a playoff game by 10 points isn't a stretch, but it is scary to lay those points. So I agree with you. I'm not sure about that. Let's move on to, and I think we both have the Chiefs in the Super Bowl from our
Yeah.
preseason
Yeah.
prediction. So, all right, let's move on to the next game. Lions, that place is going to be rocking on Saturday night, 8 o'clock. They're a 9.5 point favorite over the Commanders. As much as I loved Washington last week, I just don't. I don't see how they come in and get it done a second week in a row. Again, I probably will take the Lions to cover, man. They're winning big, like all the time here. I just think that place is going to be rocking. They're going to come out with a lot of energy. So again, wouldn't be surprised if they found a way to win by 10.
Yeah, I can't pick against the Lions, but I would take Washington in the points. The I know the Lions are killing people, and I know that what they did to Minnesota in that finale, which was a huge finale for the number one seed in the NFC. They are just so beat up on defense that I think it's going to catch up with them at some point, and maybe that's Jaden Daniels is able to throw for a bunch of yards or run for a bunch of yards, whatever it is, and keep Washington in the game. I think there's going to be a ton of points scored. I think that's the way Detroit needs to win games. But I would pick the Lions in a close one. I think Washington scores with them and keeps it within the number.
Yeah, I think they can score them and keep it close, and the Lions still win by 10.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
just, and the other thing too is, I mean, the Lions just a much different opponent than Tampa Bay. I just never took Tampa Bay seriously. So
yeah, that's
anyway,
fair.
but I mean, listen, if they only win by 3 or 5, I'm not going to sit there and say, oh, I can't believe it. But I definitely am taking the Lions to win. All right, you're up first here as we go to Sunday, 3 o'clock. So we got 3 and 6:30 start. That's pretty cool on Sunday. Rams at Eagles. Eagles -6.5. I'll put you on the clock.
Um, I got the Eagles going to the Super Bowl, so I'm taking the Eagles. And I would say nothing I saw in that Eagles Packers game scares me about the Eagles. Jalen Hurts is coming off the concussion, had missed some time. The passing game wasn't dynamic. I think it still can be when it needs to be. Uh, they own the line of scrimmage, and I think that portends well for them as they go through this NFC playoffs. If you can protect your quarterback and run the ball and get to the other team's quarterback, that's a great recipe. So I'm going to take the Eagles. Now, we talked about the Rams. It's a little bit of a short week for the Rams. They haven't played on Monday night. They got to fly cross country. Maybe that catches up to them. I love McVay. I really like Matt Stafford. He's got some guys to throw to. Their defense with a bunch of young guys is playing well. That Verse coming off the edge has played great every time I've watched them. But I'm going to take Philly. It's a tough place to play. I think Philly's. I think Philly might be the. I think Philly's going to the Super Bowl. So obviously, I got them winning this game.
Wow. So you have Philly going into Detroit and winning too, then.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. Put Petrak on the board for the Eagles. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's tough to argue any of that. I mean, boy, you got me sitting here. I forgot about the Monday night deal. So you're right. I mean, you're talking about 1 day more rest for Philly, and that's a big deal, flying across country. But you know what, Scott? You know, we didn't bring up, there might be something to be said for this team fighting for that city right now,
Yeah.
and what's going on there. And, you know, they won their first game. Technically, it was a home game, but it wasn't. You know, Scott, listen, there's always a surprise in the playoffs, and I'm calling it right now.
Wow.
The Rams go in and beat Philadelphia, and they move on to face the Lions. It's just something I started thinking about today, knowing we were going to tape this. And, you know, Philadelphia did not look amazing to me. I mean, Green Bay just was awful.
Yes.
And, you know, if they played a team that gave them any more fight or was healthier, I mean, the Packers were just beat up. And I just think that they were ripe to get beaten in that game. And the Packers were awful and still had a shot there at the end. So I don't know, man. I think I'm taking Stafford over Hurts. I think that somehow Stafford outplays Hurts, and there's some mistakes made by Philadelphia. You know, you got AJ Brown reading books on the sidelines. I mean, you know, I don't know. I can't believe I'm doing it, but I'm going Rams, and I feel okay about it.
Wow, that's interesting, buddy. I mean, you can make good points, and I think I would take Stafford ahead of Hurts too. I would take McVay over Sirianni. And if the Eagles lose, maybe add another coaching change to the carousel, because if they flame out, could you see Philly make a change? He's been, he's a lightning rod anyway. But so I mean, I could see that. I could see fighting for LA, but I picked the Eagles before the season. I'm not getting off them now.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And again, I lost the Packers, who I picked to go to the Super Bowl at the beginning of the year, but at least they made the playoffs. But I don't have a shot to get both in like you do. So good luck, buddy.
Thanks.
I hope you're wrong, because I just picked the Rams. Right. All right, the last game. Do you agree this is the best one?
Oh, without a doubt.
Without a doubt. Bills at home, favored by 1. Heavy over-unders 51.5. Let's see. That is, oh no, the Commanders Lions 55.5. Ravens, Bills. Scott, you saw who's favored, right?
Well, it's the Ravens now, isn't it?
Yeah, Ravens.
Yeah, it moved from Bills to Ravens, I think, yeah.
What was the move, do you think?
I don't know. People watched the Ravens play last week.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know?
Maybe the way the betting was going early.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
All right, I'll go first on this one. And I have a feeling I know where you're going to go. And I'm going to go. So here's an interesting one, because I'm just going to lay it right on the line. I'm going Ravens, and I'm going 2 road teams on Sunday, but I'm going a favorite. It's like weird, because I'm going a road team, but I'm going the favorite, right? Which is weird to think that the Bills are not favored at home. But I just think that and I just think it's going to be a Lamar Mahomes AFC Championship. Now, of course, you're saying, well, what about Josh Allen? It could be him as well. Well, here's the deal, Scott. You know what I always say. Show it to me first before I pick it. And I'm not going to pick the Bills to go to the Super Bowl until they show me they can do it, because every year they falter in the playoffs. They're still 2 steps away from getting to the Super Bowl. And I just think that Baltimore, they already beat them once this year. And it was in Buffalo, right? Or was it in Baltimore? I thought it was in Buffalo.
I think it was in Buffalo. I think so.
Yeah. And I think they beat them pretty solidly.
It's like 35-10, I want to say.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
So, I mean, I could look that up here
yeah, I
while we're
get it.
talking.
I'm looking up.
You got it?
Yeah,
Okay. I'm going Ravens. Going Ravens. So I'm going Ravens, Chiefs, Rams, Lions. That's my final four. Now, do I feel like my picks on Sunday are locks? No, but
right.
I feel pretty good about it. I have no problem going Ravens here. Am I rooting for them? No, but that's my pick.
Yeah, it was week 4 in Baltimore, 35-10. Ravens won.
Hmm.
So
It was in
it
Baltimore.
was in Baltimore.
Okay, all right.
Um, yeah, it's interesting. I'm going Ravens as well, Chud.
Ooh,
Yeah,
I
I
thought you'd
think
go Bills. I thought you were
no,
going Bills.
no. I think the
Okay.
Ravens got something going. It'll be fascinating if they do win and they go to Kansas City, how that plays out. Um, it could be a great matchup. Lamar's playing out of his head, and I know there's questions about him in the playoffs. He answered a lot of those last week, and you got to keep answering them. Answering those questions. I get it. That's how the NFL works. But he played so well last week. Ran the ball a ton. Made some great throws. Their defense is playing better. Derrick Henry, who I thought was washed up, is not washed up, and the two of them are a threat. I think the Bills are vulnerable on defense. So I would not be surprised to see a bunch of points scored here. I don't know if the weather's going to be a factor. I know it's going to be cold. I don't know if it's going to be wind or snowy or anything like that. But I like the Ravens in all types of conditions. I think they can run it. They can throw it. Zay Flowers not being there, and he didn't practice today, and I think he's questionable to doubtful to play. That hurts. But Bateman's shown up. They got those two tight ends that are really good. So I just think Baltimore's playing really well. It's a tough place to go in and win. I get it. If Baltimore won, would I be stunned? Like you like to say, no, not at all. Josh Allen is playing at an MVP level. Lamar's playing at an MVP level. They're
You
running the
mean if
ball really
Buffalo
well
won?
too. Yeah, Buffalo won. I wouldn't be
Yeah.
surprised. Allen's playing at a great level. They're running the ball, but I think Baltimore's a better team and has been playing really well lately. So I got Baltimore.
All right. So the only one we disagree on is Rams Eagles.
Go Eagles.
There you have it. All right. Well, we'll see what happens, and should be a fun weekend, no doubt. I mean, I just hope they're all competitive games. I mean, I think they all have a chance to be competitive. If I had to pick one where I thought it wouldn't be as competitive, it might be the Chiefs Texans. But again, we talk about how the Chiefs play a lot of close games, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I agree with you, Chad. I agree. I think there's a chance for this to be a really good weekend of football. So I'm looking forward to it. Chad, I'm looking forward to recapping it next week, and we'll talk about conference championships. Isn't it funny how you get to the playoffs and all of a sudden it feels like they're almost over? And I know we got 3 weeks left, but you know what I'm saying? Next week when we're talking, it'll be there's 3 total games left in the NFL season, and it just comes on you quick, I guess is what I'm getting at. But we'll have that to talk about. Maybe we have a Tommy Rees introductory press conference to talk about. Maybe there's other members of the Browns who talk. Who knows? There always seems to be some news. So we'll take care of that next week. I appreciate it as always, Chud. Thanks so much, buddy.
Yeah, no problem. It was fun.
And we'll do this again next week. Thanks, everybody, for listening. You can read all my work at brownzone.com. And this has been another episode of the Zone Coverage Podcast.